I'm an astronomical artist. I really like to specialize in the solar system because I really, really love the neighborhood we live in. I work, I don't get out much. This is the first time I've been in front of something like this in 10 or 15 years, but unlike Mr. Johnson, I can't really go out and explore the places I illustrate because they'll probably kill me. I want to start off a little bit with a little background on space art, where it came from, just this little brief, compact history. The history itself is pretty long and complicated. It's been the subject of at least 3 books, including The Art of Space, available at better bookstores everywhere. But space art really goes back to a very specific date, 400 years ago, on a winter night in 1610. And you can date this so specifically because that's the first time anybody was aware that there were other worlds than the Earth. That was when Galileo pointed a telescope in the sky and discovered that these strange little stars, called planets, weren't stars at all. They were other worlds. And from that point, people started wondering, what were these other worlds like? What would it be like to visit them? What conditions were there? What conditions were imposed by their distance from the sun and their size and things like that. So space art goes back 400 years, 407, I think to be exact, my math is right. So I thought I'd start off with a little history, just a few examples to show where space art came from and how it kind of evolved before I get into show and tell. And I've got to refer to some notes for this part because I'm terrible with dates and numbers and names. One of the first was Donato Preti, in the 17th century, included images of the moon as it was seen through Galilean telescopes in the 1600s, and this is one of them. Obviously, it doesn't look like that. He was showing what this little observer here on the left was seeing, and it was something. It was a view of the moon no one had even comprehended before. But the first real space art, something based on, beyond what you can see on the telescope, taking what you can see through a telescope and then interpreting it to what you would see if you were actually visiting the planet, was one of the illustrations for Jules Verne's Off on a Comet. This is 1871 by an artist named Paul Philippeteau. And this is Saturn's rings as they would appear from Saturn. It actually is extremely accurate. I mean, he shows a solid Saturn because nobody knew, but the rings, with the shadow of the planet cast across the rings, is really what you would see from higher latitudes on Saturn. So I've always considered this really the first true science-based space painting or space illustration. It's a woodcut. In 1882, Etienne Trouvelot, an astronomer artist, did these very pretty paintings. These aren't really space art in the sense he's not interpreting anything. These are what he was observing through his telescope in the 1880s. Mars down below and Jupiter in its red spot. That pupil in the middle of the red spot is a shadow of Io being cast on the planet, giving Jupiter kind of a startled look. 1874, mathematician James Naismith collaborated with, I gotta look up names, the astronomer James Carpenter in a book called The Moon. And it was mostly telescopic photographs of the moon, but to show people what those little holes and spots on the moon might look like to somebody visiting the moon, Naismith created plaster models and photographed them. And this is one of the models he made for this, which is just really nice. There's 3 or 4, and a couple are actually set on the surface and seen mountainous landscapes. Camille Flammarion, the great French astronomer, science pop, he was the Carl Sagan of his day. Did a lot of books on the solar system, on Mars, And this is from a book called Worlds in the Sky that was published in 1884. And it shows a mountain on Mars in the middle of a sea. One of the theories at the time was that the dark markings on Mars were oceans and seas. And you can find maps of Mars from the time that, you know, label all the spots as this ocean and this sea and this bay and this harbor. But this, I mean, Mars doesn't have oceans, at least not anymore. But like all space artists, this artist was confined by what was known at the time, so he was kind of stuck. But this is the surface of the moon in the same book. The artist is, oh dear, didn't write his name down, too bad. He's out of luck.
Huh?
Yes. Thank you. Oh, there. I can't see that. You're luckier than I am. Paul Fouché. I should be looking at this thing instead of that. This is the surface of Jupiter. At the time, because of the changing roiling clouds and the existence of the Great Red Spot, which at one time was thought to be a gigantic volcanic eruption, a lot of astronomers thought that Jupiter was a volcanic world. I'll give you the very earliest stages of the Earth's formation. And a lot of early space artists showed Jupiter as being this volcanic, you know, highly active world. And this is an illustration of Jupiter from 1884. The first artist to actually specialize in space art. Up to now, you've seen people who are sort of commissioned to do this stuff as book illustrators, but they didn't specialize in it. They just, as assignment came along, they did it and moved on. But the first artist to actually specialize in space art was an amateur British astronomer named Scriven Bolton. And he was also a very good amateur artist. And his work eventually appeared in the 1920s throughout England, mostly in the Illustrated London News, where I think he produced something like 60, 70, or 80 full-page illustrations illustrating all kinds of astronomical concepts. This is Mars and Saturn as he observed them through his own backyard telescope. And these are 1920s. He was a very, very good observer if you look at the detail visible on Saturn's sphere and in the rings. But Bolton also did some really, really extraordinary space art. He invented this technique, kind of evolved from what Naismith did, but took it a long ways further, where he'd build plaster landscapes. Take a photograph, print the photograph, and then paint into it. He built this landscape, he painted in the starry sky, painted in the Earth, eclipsing the sun. And he did a lot of these things. He must have had the patience of Job. But I think he had some money. But a volcanic eruption on the moon. And again, he built this beautiful plaster model, photographed it, then went back in, painted in the sky and the stars, the volcanic eruption and the clouds and steam and smoke. So a very, very effective technique that's still in use today, as I'll show you. This is a Scriven Bolton illustration showing as it says, the full Earth seen from the moon. Very, very, very few artists got the appearance of the Earth right. I did an article a few years ago on depictions of the Earth as seen from space in pre-space flight artwork. And only 2 or 3 people really got the swirling, bowling ball looking effect of the clouds correctly. But hey, it's 1924, so I gotta give him credit for getting that. At about the same time he was working, a French amateur astronomer named Lucien Rudeau started publishing his work as well, often in the same publications. Rudeau is also a very, very talented amateur astronomer, and had his own observatory in France, and actually has a crater on Mars named after him. And not for his work as an artist, but for his work as an astronomer. But this is an illustration from Rudeau's On Other Worlds. It was published in 1937. And this is Venus. At a time when everybody was thinking Venus was a tropical planet, sort of like a prehistoric Earth, You know, because it was all cloud covered, people thought it must be tropical and maybe full of dinosaurs. Rudeau nailed it as a superheated, barren desert. And if he had done this in color, I think that it would look like something that would be illustrated book today easily. This is Mars, seen from Deimos by Rudeau. And again, the planet's based on personal observation, and an extraordinary thing, considering it was done almost 80 years ago. Actually, it was 80 years ago. Mars by Rudeau, in the same book. He shows it as only thing he missed was the blue sky, but everybody thought Mars would have a blue sky up until Viking landed, so you can't fault him for that, but everything else about this could be used today as an illustration. An eclipse of the sun by the Earth, seen from the moon. And you can see that the sun isn't quite fully behind the Earth. So that there's a little bit of sunlight. We're in the shadow, but the mountains beyond are still being lit by the sunlight. So it's not the eclipse isn't completely full yet. So it's really, really nice. And that bright star is Venus in the center. And even his star field is correct. It's beautiful work. Rudeau was also really, really prescient in his depiction of the moon. You know, at a time when every artist was doing these alpine landscapes of the moon, these craggy, jagged, precipitous mountains. Rudeau said, no, the moon's got these rolling hills like South Dakota or North Dakota. And he gave a really good reason why he did it this way. He said, you look at the moon through a telescope, and you look at the limb of the moon, the edge of the moon, against the dark, background sky, you can see the mountains in profile. You can see that they're rolling and eroded. They're not jagged and pointed. Bingo. But he was really the only artist who did that until the 1960s. Probably because the moon really looks boring. The moon should look craggy and jagged, but so that's why people preferred it. Rudeau's depiction of Jupiter from one of its satellites, I think it's from Io. And again, it's based on personal observation through his own observatory. And again, it's a beautiful, beautiful painting of Jupiter, considering once again it's done 80 years ago through a relatively small telescope. And Saturn seen from Rhea, one of its moons. Everything about this picture is correct. It can be used to illustrate a book today, and there's really nothing wrong with it. You can see the shadow of the rings on the planet, on this lower part of the crescent. The upper part is lit with light reflecting from the rings back onto the night side of Saturn. He thought through everything, and it's this really extraordinary picture. Rudeau might be the grandfather of modern space art. The father of modern space art is Chesley Bonestell. And I imagine, at least I hope, most of you have heard of him. He did this painting in 1944. It's Saturn seen from Titan. And it's been called the painting that launched 1,000 careers. And without any kind of untruth to that, there are scores of astronomers, astronauts, astrophysicists who were inspired to go into the careers they did because of this painting specifically. Carl Sagan even said that when he was a kid, he said, I didn't know what the planets looked like until I saw Chesley Bonestell's work. So it was, it's wrong technically because there's no blue sky on Titan, but it's a really evocative picture. And it was done early enough. Bonestell, in his career, worked for Illustrated London News as well as Scribb and Bolton. So he used some of Scribb and Bolton's techniques. The mountainscape here is actually a plaster model, clay and plaster, that Bonestell photographed. Tried all kinds of different lighting patterns. I have all his test photos. He tried the lighting from all different angles, much like a digital artist would today, until he got what he wanted, took the right photograph, made a print, painted on top of it. and adding the snow. He added the color, everything. And he did this for about maybe 7 or 8 of his paintings, and all the rest he kind of gave up because it's a laborious thing to do. Bonacieux also came out of Hollywood special effects, so he was able to use a lot of the model-making techniques from the bad painters would use in his artwork as well. Surface of Mercury. This is from 1948 or 9. And, let's see. Yeah, I say here that what Bonastell's stuff hit the public like a bombshell, because until he was painting, it was always obviously an artist's rendering, and you have that sort of barrier between the viewer and the artwork, where they're thinking, well, that's all well and good, but obviously this is an artist's rendering. It's an artist's impression. This planet or this moon, it better look like something totally different. This guy just made it up. Bonastell's work was so photographically realistic, it looked like postcards, like he painted these things from life. And it was really a watershed moment in the history of space art, because people believed his artwork. It became immensely influential. When I was at the Air and Space Museum, I started a file of artwork inspired by Bonestell. When it got to be 4 inches thick, I stopped. There were comic book covers and board games and books that stole his artwork outright or copied it. It was just everywhere. It was enormously influential. Saturn's ring seen from about 40 degrees north latitude on Saturn. I should mention here, this is the first time some hardware has shown up. I should mention that there are really kind of 3 different kinds of space art. There's the hardware artists, who kind of specialize in how we're going to get into space. Spacecrafts, astronauts, space colonies, this kind of thing. And then there are the artists who specialize in what we're going to find when we get there, which is kind of what I'm mostly interested in. More the landscape artists. And I'm called the rock and ball artists among our group, because there's a bunch of rocks and a ball. And there's the space artists who like to interpret what space means, and they get more symbolic, abstract artists and surrealist artists. And amongst our group, they're the swirlies. But there's a big overlap, because there's this example. This is a fine depiction of a lunar crater at the same time as a depiction, he has some of the spacecraft and hardware in there. So there's an overlap between all of those. Crater Theophilus. This was published in Life magazine in 1946. And very, very tip of that peak, clear up there on the left, you can see little astronauts. And he was chastised by Life magazine for putting those in there. They thought the editor said it was too far-fetched. They wanted him to take them out, and he wouldn't do it. So Bonestell was at the school of the craggy, alpine-looking moon, and he's one of the main reasons why everybody was surprised when Apollo landed and it didn't look like this. And everybody in the world should have known better. Bonestell even owned a copy of Rideau's book. Rideau explains why the moon should look like this, but he said he didn't think Rideau could paint mountains well. But my opinion, I think that it's the moon's fault for not looking like this. Not Bonestell's. This is what it's supposed to look like. Like that. And so when people were seeing artwork like this appearing in magazines like Life magazine, Coronet, and in books like The Conquest of Space, The World We Live In, he brought a believability to the solar system. These places weren't just abstractions anymore. They were just numbers in a chart, or fuzzy little, telescopic photos from Earth-based telescopes. These places became real. There's something you could walk around on. So Bonestell gave a sense of, even if they weren't always technically accurate, he gave a sense of reality to the solar system it never had before. What's next? Between Rideau and Bonestell, the third, probably most influential and important space artist was Ludek Peszek, who died in 2009, I think. He was a Czechoslovakian expatriate living in Switzerland. And he went back a little bit to more of the painterly approach of Rudeau, but at the same time was, meticulously accurate as it could be. This is Titan, again, once again, to a blue sky, because this was done in the 1970s. And his painterliness, I think, added to the believability, because his artwork looked like he had gone, he was a plein air painter. It looked like he had been there, painted on location. And his work appeared in National Geographic, all over the United States in the 1970s. This is seen on Mercury. By the way, he painted in temperas on construction paper, black construction paper that he first painted over in black tempera, then painted on top of that with tempera. These things are insanely fragile. I own this painting, and every 2 years I have to spray the back up with alcohol to kill the fungus. He did an incredible series of paintings of the surface of Mars. This is the interior of the crater of Olympus Mons. And once again, they're painterly. There's no mistake. Like bonus cells, you can almost think they were photographs. There's no question that Peszek's paintings are paintings, but they look so natural and so unplanned. Like bonus cells can be almost park-like in their perfect detail. Whereas Peszek's, they have a real natural look to them. I think that really enhances their realism. Dust storm on Mars. Peszek kind of invented this view. Every space artist has done this now. In fact, I'll show you what I did. He kind of invented this, and he did about 4 or 5 different versions. I don't know which one this is. But being within Saturn's rings and seeing all these flying icebergs rolling past you is really a spectacular idea. That you see it all the time now. But when I first saw this, I had never seen anybody do this before ever. It just took my breath away. Since Peszek's time, there's been a proliferation of space artists. My competition is legion, and most of us belong to a group, IAAA, the International Association of Astronomical Artists. There's about 250, 300 members worldwide, from Iceland to Japan, and we hold exhibitions and whatnot. But one of the important things we do is have workshops in places on Earth that are analogs of places in the solar system. Because there's really nothing in the solar system, any of the moons or any of the planets, there's not some analog here on Earth. Because Earth isn't an isolated example. There's just difference in scale. We don't have the biggest canyons, but we have canyons. So you see how canyons work on Earth, or how glaciers work on Earth, or how crevasses work on Earth, deserts work. You know how they work anywhere else in the solar system, or any place else in the universe for that matter. So we have workshops all over the world. Most of my paintings of both Mars and Venus are informed by a workshop we had in Death Valley. So I can stop on the notes now because I know my stuff. Except the numbers. I didn't print out, I don't know. Okay, I'll have to make up some names. But that's all right. As I said, all numbers over 80 look pretty much alike to me. So, up until about 15 years ago, I worked in traditional media, mostly acrylic, until I got a project where I had to both write and illustrate 10 books, 2 books every 3 months. And with about 20 some illustrations for each book, I did the first 2 paintings. I thought, holy cow, there's no way in the world I can meet this deadline. A lot of my colleagues, my friends in the have been badgering me, Ron, you should work digitally. And I resisted this because I didn't work myself with my computer art because I thought, oh, it's going to look alike. So I finally gave in because I had no choice. And the first time, I shared my pictures, and the first time I heard, oh, that looks like a Ron Miller painting, I thought, bingo, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. So I didn't want things to look generic, and but I think it doesn't look generic because first of all, I don't like the phrase computer-generated art. It doesn't generate art. I wish it did. I wish there was a button that said space painting. You know, I can push it and there's type. But it's not. And plus the fact I refuse to take what the computer gives me as a given. And I see that too many times. I'll get people send me stuff. And obviously they did press the button. They figure since the computer generated this image, it has to be right. And it looks terrible. So the computers, it's a tool no more different than an airbrush. I finesse it, I fiddle with it, and a lot of these things are mixed media. I take photographs wherever I go. I take textures of rocks, I take pictures of rocks, I take pictures of canyons, I take pictures of clouds, everything I can think of that looks neat. And I incorporate those in my pictures. So that way they're kind of collage-like. I will sometimes, I'll show you as I go along, but I'll do things in pencil or even in color pencil or little paintings where I can't really do it as well in Photoshop or something. And scan that and incorporate that in the picture. Whatever works. So my feeling is if it comes out right, you did it right. If it doesn't look good, you did it wrong. That's that's the bottom, I think, rule for any art. If it looks right at the end, whatever you did to get there was the right way to do it. This is just a placeholder of a family portrait of the planets I did. Just have something in the background while I explain that. And actually, since I can kind of see people, if there's questions along the way about individual pictures, go ahead and raise a hand, and if I spot you, I'll do it, because that might be better than trying to remember what you saw, you know, half an hour from now or something. This is sunrise on Mercury. And I was glad Mr. Johnson brought up the Hudson River School, because I think Hudson River School is one of the origins of space art. There's a real connection between space art and Hudson River School. Both are interested in the depiction, not only accurate depiction of sort of grand landscapes, but the romance of it. You know, it's not enough just to show a landscape. You have to kind of get across that emotional impact of seeing something big, something grand, something unusual. And in this case, to be the sun seen from Mercury, which is 3 times bigger than it looks from the Earth, 9 times the brilliance and radiation. And like this River School, I will sometimes put a little astronaut, a little figure in the corner. Like Albert Bierstadt would put an elk or a hunter somewhere in the corner of a picture. Because you see that little human relation, and it also gives a sense of scale. If you get something strange enough, people don't know whether they're looking at something that's 10 feet wide or 1,000 miles. So there's a reason for these little guys down there. I'll put them in if I can. Sometimes the assignment doesn't permit that. Venus. My little show and tell session is going to be kind of a tour through the solar system on out. Like I said, Venus, my mental picture of Venus is informed by studying Death Valley. And it's a good reason for that, because except for the fact that Death Valley is 700 degrees, it's a lot like Venus. It doesn't rain sulfuric acid either. So other than that, it's a lot like Venus. This is a crater on Venus with sulfuric acid clouds, which would be yellow. Let's see. Oh, a volcanic eruption on Venus. There are volcanoes on Venus. For a long time, they knew there were volcanoes. They weren't too sure if they were active ones, but there are active volcanoes here and there on Venus. And which gives me an excuse to throw in some lightning, because I always like doing lightning. And so this is fun. This is kind of a mixed media thing again. The lava flow is kind of evolved from a photograph of some cracked asphalt in a parking lot. And I thought, so there's bits and pieces of all kinds of stuff in these things. Partly because, I think of these things as I think of them. Partly because I don't think nothing looks more natural than the real thing. I could sit there and fiddle all those little, cracks in the lava and all, but each one would have been put in intentionally for the right spot with, malice aforethought, and that gives them kind of an artificiality. Like Bottomless paintings were like that. They're very park-like. They're very well groomed. Whereas I think there's a more randomness you can get into a picture like this, the more natural it appears. And the more natural it appears, the more likely it is somebody who's looking at it is going to accept it as something that really exists. So I try to get random stuff in as much as I can. Well, including the Earth in this group of stuff, not a zillion Earth pictures, but it's kind of like, including it here would be kind of like giving yourself a blue ribbon in a beauty show, so I kind of skipped over the Earth, except for one picture of the Earth being destroyed. It's being sucked into a black hole. And it's from a book I did called The End of the World. And I like doing that. I really like doing apocalyptic pictures and things like that. So this is the Earth being sucked into a black hole. Any day now. This is, I can't think of the name of the little body, it's Thera, I think, was that little Mars-sized body that smashed into the early Earth 4.5 billion years ago, and the debris of which eventually went to orbit around the Earth, coalesced into our moon. So this is one of the stages in the birth of our moon. And actually, that little gliding planet, it still exists, it's still there. Its core merged with our core of our planet. So that little body there on the left is still here. It's just that way about 3,000 miles. I had to do this too. This is the Earth eclipsing the sun, seen from the moon. I was directly inspired by that beautiful picture that Rudeau did. And the sun's not quite being eclipsed. So those mountains in the far distance on the left are still being lit by sunlight. And the Earth's atmosphere, you see a little red ring as the sunlight passes through the atmosphere. So you're seeing all the sunsets and all the sunrises occurring on Earth at that moment, all at the same time, which I think is a nice thing to see. Just an average landscape on Mars. I like Mars. My favorite subject, I love doing Mars, I love doing Titan. Those are my two favorite places to illustrate. This is Mars. It has a little bit of everything Mars would have. So it's you show this to somebody or show it to kids, you can pretty much talk about Mars and move on. So it's got deserts, it's got a tiny little sun, dark sky, a dust devil. I love doing the dust devils, and red rocks. And I use, in generating some of the main forms in these paintings, I use a little protein called pterogen, which you've probably heard of. But I fool around with that a lot. It creates all the humps and bumps and things. But I paint my own height field maps. And these are black and white maps. They look like topographic maps where white is high and dark is low. So I paint these things, run it through pterogen, and it turns all that dark and light into a landscape. And that way I can make everything exactly where I want it. Every little wrinkle and every little bump is where I want it to be. And those can be the most time-consuming things. I have to run it through, that little wrinkle on that hill doesn't look right. So I do it again, I do it again, I do it again until it comes out right. And I can also employ force perspective in this, like I did in this picture of Valles Marineris on Mars. I put a little space, little Mars rover in there for scale, a couple of astronauts. But I actually made the canyon in my height field map actually does recede like this, so I sort of forced the perspective, so it made it deeper than pterogen would have done. This is also one of the, people ask me all the time, well, we have all these space probes and landers and things, what can you do? Well, I can do this. It's the difference between, say, the real photographs and images that NASA brings back, and the paintings that I and other space artists do, is the difference between, say, touring the United States from an airliner at 30,000 feet, like you have see the Grand Canyon, and seeing the Grand Canyon standing on the North Rim. There's a big difference. It's one thing to explain to people how big this canyon is. It's 3,000 miles long, but that's a number. Or to show a photograph seen from an orbiter, it's just a winding crack in Mars. The space artists can put you on the spot, on the rim of this thing, and show you what it would look like if you were actually there. Yes?
Do you feel like you can also take certain liberties with the colors you pick, too?
Can I take certain liberties with the colors I pick? Yes and no. I try not to take too many liberties with color. But there are some liberties I do take where I think it would, to do a reality would be more confusing. For example, sometimes I show Saturn seen from one of its moons. The moons orbit in the plane of the rings. So the rings are just a straight line. So I occasionally discover people saying, what is that? Is that a spaceship flying through there or something? I don't understand it. So if I tip the rings just 1 degree, so you can just barely see it going around the thing, it's a 1 degree inaccuracy, but people now understand that it's a ring. So I think sacrificing a tiny little bit of strict accuracy makes the picture more accurate, because people now understand what they're seeing and not misunderstanding it. So, yeah, I will fool around with things like that, and but I have to be careful. I have to do it not willy-nilly. So there has to be a good reason for doing that sort of thing. Dust storm on Mars. One day I spent a weekend out in my backyard with a collection of 4th of July smoke bombs. And I have hundreds of photos of smoke bombs going on. And I combined, I don't know, half a dozen of them into that dust storm. And like I said, nothing looks more real than the real thing. So I've used these things for geysers and volcanic eruptions, and they look great. I'm always reminded of something that Norman Rockwell said in his autobiography. He was painting an illustration of a father dressed up as Santa Claus. And the idea was this guy's put on a Santa Claus suit, and Santa Claus's beard was hanging over a chair. Typically of Rockwell, he actually had a Santa Claus beard hanging on a chair as a reference, so he could paint this thing. And you see about a half an hour later, he's still painting, hairs, and he got, oh, this is ridiculous. So he grabbed a bunch of hair off the beard, shoved it onto the picture, sent it in, it looked fine. And he says it might not have been art, but it was fun. But once again, though, that's how it turned out, So he didn't really cheat, he just did what he had to do. And I feel the same way about this thing. You just do what you need to do. So, a dust devil going through the crater of Olympus Mons, being looked upon by a couple of intrepid astronomers. So, keep looking at questions. No. Okay. Oh, this is actually something I wish I had more examples of. I've been fretting ever since I left home that I didn't include more. When I'm doing things like asteroids and comets, I will often follow Bonistel's lead. I'll make models, very big things out of clay, really meticulous, all kinds of things. And I'll sprinkle cocoa powder over them. It makes wonderful little textures and fills in craters and things. And so most of my asteroids and comets are actually three-dimensional models, and I photograph them, and I fool with them. And this is what I was done using. I had to do an illustration of Phobos breaking up a million years from now, forming a ring around Mars. So I hit one of my models with a hammer and photographed it, and pieced a few pieces together, and because it made Phobos disintegrating. So like Rockwell said, it may not be art, but it's a lot of fun hitting that thing with a hammer. This came out last August, just before the Juno probe went into orbit around Jupiter. I got to do this thing a lot, where I'll get an assignment to illustrate something that hasn't happened yet, but the picture will appear during the event. And that's really nerve-wracking, because I know I'm going to get it all wrong. No one's been there yet. You're going to compare my picture to be on the cover of this magazine. On the inside will be the actual photographs. So I did what I could. My wife built a model for me of the Juno. It's a little paper model. It's about like this, about the wingspan about like so. I photographed that. And I don't know how well the detail shows up on the screen, but I'm really pleased with how my Jupiter turned out, because it's got this really, really crazy tight cloud pattern that Jupiter turned out to have in the Juno photo, so I felt good about that. But I have to point out that I am pleased with my aurora. Every once in a while I please myself. In Jupiter's clouds, I used, I think, every single smoke bomb picture I had. And it took forever, because they're all, I mean, some of these smoke bombs were blue, and some were green, and some were red, and some were white. And I think I took some photographs of cloud formations from my files. I had photographed. I'm always photographing clouds. I put those in there too. And I think the Photoshop file had 65 or 70 layers. And to the point where I could hardly even open the program. I think it turned out okay. There's two of Jupiter's moons. There's Europa and Callisto in the sky. And a little balloon probe. Io, sulfur volcano erupting on Io. And in this case, there are all those little plumes I did with #2 pencil on white typing paper. I did 4 or 5 different drawings of these things, scanned them, reversed the scan so it became white on black, then colorized them in Photoshop, superimposed them in several different layers, and got my volcano. So this is part digital and part #2 pencil. I think even some of the little cracks on the left were done in pencil in the lava flow, and a couple of stupid astronauts. This is Tohilmans. This is this Matterhorn-like peak on Io, and that's Europa there in the distance. The distant eruption is done with pencil again, and the one in the very foreground I did with a Sharpie on white paper, and then scanned it and colored it and put it in, and the little cracks were done with pencil again. And a lot of the rock textures are actually that rock there on the left, all those cracks, that's the same asphalt parking lot I used to make the lava flow with. I superimposed it on there. And if I recall, the mountain itself is a clay model that I built and photographed and put that in there too. So when somebody says, did you do this digitally? I said, well, how do you define that? I mean, ultimately it's digital, but it's 1,000 different pieces. This is some explorers exploring Europa, with Jupiter on the horizon, and Io and Callisto in the distance. And I just like Europa because it's cool. So I have probably 40 pictures of Europa in my files, but I had to draw the line somewhere. And okay. No. A couple of explorers observing a cryogeyser on Europa. It's got these things. No one's seen them directly, but they detected the plumes. So I thought, well, if there's detected the plumes, there must be something pluming. And so That's what you got here. And once again, technically, it's that's one of my smoke bombs there in the distance. I have hundreds of pictures of these things. But I try to do everything as much as I can myself. Like the Jupiter's bands there. It's a rectangular map wrapped around a sphere digitally that I put in there. But I made the map myself. You know, it's based on NASA stuff. But I don't like depending too much on unfound things like that. It's more fun to do myself, and I can make things the way I want them to be, and that's really important. Actually, this is the very first digital picture I did, and it's Saturn seen from Rhea. This is the one where I heard, oh, it looks like a Ron Miller painting, and I was very happy to hear that because I had a lot of pictures to do. But there are things like color choice, composition, things like that don't change, depending on the media you use. I would have had the same picture in acrylics, as far as the composition is concerned, as I would have done here. It's just that the computer saved me a lot of time. If I were to take something to this kind of finish in traditional media, I wouldn't have. If I couldn't do a traditional painting in a couple of days, I was interested in it. I would say, it's done. And it looked fine for most people, but it wasn't really taken as far as I probably could have or should have, because I get tired of cleaning the airbrush. I make one little squirt, I have to clean it, change the color, another squirt. Something's not quite in the right place, I have to do something over again. All that fiddly non-art, non-creative stuff just got me down. And working digitally just eliminates that. So I can do the same things without all the messy bits that distracted me. So I have only done one traditional space painting in the 15 years since. Well, here's my version of the inside Saturn's rings. And most of those are little modeling clay that I made. Put little holes in and carefully, and made about half a dozen, photographed different angles, and lit them, and put them in. And I didn't put all of them. I didn't make models of all those. All the tiny ones I just drew in, but the big ones I made models of. Because once again, I said there's a randomness to this that you can't get if you plan everything from scratch. No.
Do you use plasticine clay?
No, because it's too shiny. Because it's mixed with oil. I tried it, and all my asteroids looked like they had been varnished. So I have a friend who's a potter, and every few months I beg 5 or 10 pounds of potter's clay, which it has a matte look, and it's also grayer, has a better, nicer color. Although I can change the color, but it's so I just use regular clay. Because then when it dries, I can smash it. So, but just regular clay, and. This is Saturn's ring, seen from 40 degrees north latitude, or about what you would see if you were in Washington, D.C., and the Earth had Saturn's rings. This is what you'd see every day. And I think that I could trade the moon for that. Because you'd see the ring of Saturn, the shadow of the planet passing over the ring like a big clock hand. So you could tell what time it was just by looking at the sky and seeing this big clock hand slowly sweeping across that ring. It would have to be really pretty. And I put a sundog in there in the bottom because it's icy this high in the atmosphere, so probably sundogs. And I like sundogs. I look for them every winter because they're really pretty, so I have to put them on pictures. These are ice volcanoes on Enceladus. And I like Enceladus a lot. I've done a zillion pictures. I worked closely with Carolyn Porco, who's head of the imaging team of Cassini. And so she's advised me a lot on these things. Excuse me. So these things come out, these things erupt out of these vents with jet engine speed. Already, I'll zoom along here. Under the ice in Enceladus, smokers like you'd find in the Pacific Ocean. I'll kind of go kind of quickly since I'm kind of running out of time. So to say, I can stop anytime. So, but ask questions. Those are my favorite pictures. This is after a methane storm on Titan. The storm's just passed. Liquid methane's running off the hills. You see the storm in the distance. Still raining methane. This is for Scientific American. In the foothills of Titan, little methane waterfall. And smoke bombs again, showing an eruption on Triton. It says, I'm running out of time. I can take the pictures at the end, or I can stop now and take questions, or you can ask questions right now. Oh, I got to do this. This is one of the postage stamps that was mentioned in my introduction. It got attached to the spacecraft. Because apparently the fact it was not yet explored, a statement drove a lot of space scientists nuts. And I got these letters from people saying, apparently this is one of the genesis of New Horizons space program, was the idea that stamp drove them crazy. So he attached one of the stamps to the spacecraft and launched it. We got invited to the launch. So now I have one of my illustrations now well on its way to a Kuiper Belt object. I really, really hope they got that thing canceled. Otherwise, it's coming right back. Pluto. This gives me a proprietary interest in Pluto. I really like Pluto. It's a planet, by the way. Take my word. A mud volcano erupting on Pluto. The shadow of Charon on Pluto. This would get people into a hotel there, I think, seeing that thing. The first exoplanet discovered was a planet orbiting a pulsar. There's only a few left, I'll go over quickly. J1407 has a planetary ring system 200 times larger than Saturn's. If we replace Saturn with this thing in our sky, you'd see it in the daytime sky. Let's see, more. A triplanetary system. Kepler 64 or something. A super Earth. These are super habitable. It's to be large enough to be a better Earth than the Earth we have. TRAPPIST 1b, just discovered a couple months ago. TRAPPIST 1c. A silly string of numbers, Kelt something. It's so close to its star, it's actually evaporating the planet. And it would look like if you were there. And let's just quickly again. Starquake. The jetting galaxy. This is the last one. This is a super black hole eating a star. This is for Scientific American just a couple of months ago. Since I'm getting signals, let me just open up to questions. I hope there's questions. Oh, yes. You and the, whatever color that is, I can't see.
What was the software you said you used? You used the grayscale?
Oh, Terrigen. Yeah, it's incredible. I really don't know how to use it. There's complications to that program I haven't figured out yet, but I manage. It's just look up Terra just on planetside.com, and it's very inexpensive. In fact, I haven't paid for it. I use my brother's copy. But you can run your own height field planners to it. You can import DEM data from USGS, for example. All kinds of things. Anything will generate up and down. But I draw my own because I want things where I want them. But you can make realistic pictures like Mount St. Helens or Grand Canyon using USGS, digital elevation data. Just run it through Terrigen and cut the Grand Canyon. So yeah, way in the back, in the dark.
How long did it take you to master doing things manually after working with Earth for so long?
Well, until today. Everyone's an experiment. It really is. I sit down and I think, what will this button on Photoshop do? I'm serious. And I'll say, let's see what happens. And I try in every single one of these pictures to have something in there I haven't tried before. And what happens if I superimpose this way? Or what happens if I try that? So it's always, everyone has some little experiment in it. A lot of these streamers in there, in this previous picture, well, actually all of these, I had taken put some dry ice in a box with holes cut in the bottom and photographed all the streams of dry ice. That's what those are. So I tried that. They're all experiments. But as far as Photoshop is concerned, I've never read a manual. I just poke at the buttons and figure, you can't hurt the program by poking the buttons, so as long as you hit delete. You in the middle.
Yeah, when Comet Shoemaker-Levy hit Jupiter, did you illustrate that? Or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, me and every one of my colleagues. Yeah, I did. I had to draw the line somewhere when I brought along. But yeah, it's like atomic bombs going off in Jupiter's atmosphere. I couldn't resist that. There was another hand. So, oh, wait, you.
How did you create the ice volcanoes? You wouldn't do that?
Oh. The ice volcano, that or this? Oh, well, I know what you're talking about. That. I took a 4th of July smoke bomb, set it outside and photographed it against a dark background, and then manipulated it. It wasn't that color, and it wasn't backlit or anything. I had to do all that in Photoshop. But all the basic shapes and swirlies and things, it just was 4th of July smoke bomb. And use those a lot because they swirl, you know, kinds of things.
Is it your house a lot?
We lived out in the country. Fortunately. If there's any more questions? Oh, you.
I noticed there's always 2 astronauts in your landscapes. Do they have a story?
One's me, one's her. That's easy. Yeah.
I think that the star field is correct. In other words, I've done a little bit of this, and I'll use a simulator for astronomy.
Yeah.
You haven't heard about the land.
There's 2 answers to that. In many of these cases, I don't bother with the realistic star field. When I have to, if there's a reason, then I'll use some like Celestia to get the star pattern right and just plug that in. But at least half the time I don't even bother. They're stars. And because the subject of the picture is the things, the dots in the sky aren't quite right. It doesn't really affect the fact that it's Mars, so I don't bother too much. But if I need to, in a specific place or a specific time, I'll do that. Celestia is usually what I use because it's simple enough for me to figure out. And it makes nice little point dots. So. Oh, there must be more questions. Oh, wait,
How long does it take you to research for like each individual piece about the colors?
How long does it take me to research for these things? Well, it depends a lot on what it is. If it's something brand new, like the TRAPPIST planets, for instance, or Kelp, whatever, 9, whatever it is. It's brand new. I have never heard of it before, so I try to dig up as much as I can. I'll contact the researchers. I'll write to the astronomers who are involved and ask them, because usually the information you see in print isn't necessarily what I need to do a picture. So I'll contact them and ask them about very specific things. Other things, I've done it long enough, I can just do it out of my head. I mean, Mars or Titan. And some of these places, as long as I get the basic colors and forms and lighting correct, because we haven't been there, all I have to do is do something that's reasonable, that's plausible. So sometimes it takes several days or a week to do the research. Sometimes there's no research involved at all. But I do try to get them right, no matter what I do, because I'll hear back.
So we're actually at lunch now.
Oh, I'm going to go to lunch.
I don't want to stop this, but we have Earth food in the cafeteria.
Oh, Earth food.
Right now.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you very much.
All right.